I was freezing and I couldn't find my way back to the blind. So I sat up against a tree, just trying to figure out where everything was. And then I eventually saw the lats of the ladder, and I got over there and climbed back in. I was soaking wet. I had second degree hypothermia. Body temp was down to 93 degrees. And the vertigo knocked me out. I think four times I fainted on the 911 call.
Welcome to the SCHEELS Outdoors podcast, your source for information on hunting, fishing, and all of your outdoor passions.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the SCHEELS Outdoors podcast. Mike Anderson here, along with my co-host Solomon Bach.
How's it going, Mike?
Good. And Ashley Sorensen. How you doing?
Ashley Blank.
Ashley Blank, dang it.
It's okay, Mike.
Oh.
I just got married
I was
more than a month ago.
But it's okay. More than a month ago. And I've had more than one podcast where I have correctly said your name and then screwed it up.
I'm doing great though. How are you?
Yeah, great. You know, I better before I screwed up your name. But other than that, really good. We're approaching hunting season, so getting pretty excited for that.
You got a lot on your mind, so
I do. A lot on the mind all the time. But we've got a special guest with us today, joining us virtually from Chase Nation, and his name is Sam Ubel. Sam, how you doing today?
I'm real good. Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for joining us. Would you want to just start out talking to us a little bit about Chase Nation and who you are? Just a nice little background for us.
Yeah, you bet. So Chase Nation is my baby. I started Chase Nation with a friend back in January of 2016. I had been filming for about 5 years prior with different outdoor television show and actually a DVD production company called Whitetail Adrenaline, and then Wisconsin Whitetail Pursuit. And I did a lot of editing, not for Whitetail Adrenaline, but for Wisconsin Whitetail Pursuit. So much so that I thought, why don't I do this for myself? And so that was kind of my catalyst for starting Chase Nation. Our logo, I get asked about a lot. It's a tamarack tree with a tree stand, a bow hunter drawn back, and then it's got the halo. A lot of people think it's the moon. It is supposed to be the moon, but it's also supposed to represent the sun because we're out there at first light and last light. So that's why I went with that halo. But that tamarack tree, our logo, it was just a tree that used to grow in my front yard, and I would stare at it all the time and think how perfect it would be with a tree stand in it. And one day I sketched it, and it became a vector image, and now it's our logo.
That's very nice.
Yeah, we're an outdoor streaming television show. We've got 4 streaming titles, and just absolutely adore what we do. We get to work with a lot of great companies. We have some awesome partners in the industry, and it gives me opportunities to do things like this podcast and meet you guys. So I'm really happy to be here.
Awesome. Yeah, well, glad you're here. So what were some of the difficulties you faced getting this thing off the ground?
Well, I mean, let's face it. I mean, social media is a bear to, it's a mountain to climb, especially when you're trying to use it for a streaming platform. Getting the funding to pay for cable network is something that was outside of a reality for me. I didn't have the energy for it, to be honest. I mean, I understand, you have goals and you have dreams, you can chase them and you can achieve anything, but it wasn't a dream of mine to be on cable TV. What was a dream of mine was to be able to showcase what we do outdoors and bring it to life for people that, are sitting in their house and have nothing to do better than to watch something for entertainment purposes. I never wanted to set out to teach anybody anything. So that was never the goal. It was merely just an avenue to pursue my passion, which is videography and photography, and really tell a story. And why not do it doing what I love most? And that's just about everything outdoors, whether it's hunting or fishing. But yeah, climbing that social media ladder was a challenge, especially in the beginning. You know, how do you extend your reach, or how do you get people to find out that you exist, especially in a market that seems so saturated? You know, there was at the time, and still today, but so many, you know, different outdoor streaming shows out there, whether it's a 16-year-old kid that just picked up a camera or is using his phone and has a YouTube channel, or, you know, some of the bigger well-known names in the industry. There's a lot of competition. So how do we stand out? That was definitely one of the biggest challenges. And let me tell you, just to produce, say, like a 15 to 20 minute film, for me would take about 20 to 25 hours behind my computer. And, you know, I was a new father, so with little babies at home, trying to stay up late and edit until, you know, midnight or 1 or 2 sometimes in the morning, depending on how stuck I was on my edit, and then get up and go to work the next day. And then, you know, you put that out for the public to watch, and then maybe you only get, you know, in the beginning, a few hundred views over the course of time, and you feel defeated and deflated. And there's a lot of that thick skin that you gotta, you know, build for yourself to let that kind of thing roll off your shoulders like a raindrop on a duck's back. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And to kind of continue and persevere and have the motivation to keep doing it. So I would say that was probably the hardest part.
And a lot of that perseverance, I mean, like you said, after the first couple videos, if you pour your heart and soul into it or something like that, and it only gets a couple hundred views, I mean, that's probably where the passion kicks in, because it might not get the most views in the world, but it's something that you're proud of and that you've worked hard on, and you might not be doing it for the views. You're doing it because you're passionate about it.
Well, you know what, man? Like, so there's been times where I've sat on the edge of a hayfield along a fence row for 3 nights, for a couple hours at a time, just getting massacred by mosquitoes, with my cameras rolling, just waiting for the right shot to catch the orbs of, you know, right at the right, like that magic hour when all of the lightning bugs start to lift up off the hay, and you get those kind of bokeh'd orbs in the sky behind you, and then get a deer and velvet up close. I spent 3 nights to get that shot, and I finally got it. I used it for like a 1.5-second clip. And I remember the first time that it was seen, it was at the Badlands Film Fest. And I thought, man, I got like 2,500 people in this audience watching, and they're all industry experts and professionals, and they are all passionate about this. They're going to love that shot. And I remember just looking around the room, just trying to soak up all the faces, and I didn't see one expression that told me that somebody really was like, oh, wow, you know, look at that shot. I mean, I think being a videographer and being so invested into my edits, I get kind of sucked into the art side of it, right? So like every second counts for me, like every second. I spend a couple hours on 1 minute, you know, of film. And when you're watching it, it's not to say that, like, as a viewer, you don't appreciate what you're seeing. It in a way sucks you in and makes it more entertaining. It makes it more valuable to watch, you know, and maybe it builds up a little bit more feeling internally for the viewers. But these little clips that I spend so much time on, I have to remind myself that not everybody's going to watch that and think, I wonder how many days he sat on the edge of the field using blood to get that shot, you know? So it's a little bit of obsession too.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, it's got to be a little frustrating when you spend 3 days getting the perfect shot to edit something that's like 10 seconds, and then you open up TikTok and somebody takes 20 seconds to shoot a video and then it goes viral.
Oh man, yeah. So if you could see me at some point when I'm like, if I get all the gang from Chase Nation over to the house and I put it up on the big screen and we got the surround sound going, I'm like, okay guys, you ready? And I hit play. If one scene draws like some murmurs and then they're still talking and they always innately look to the side and they're talking to each other, I always want to just hit them in the chest and be like, hey, you're going to miss like something. Don't talk, you got to watch. I'm just so passionate about it. And that's probably why I have the motivation to keep trying to persevere despite how challenging it can be to build yourself up in what truly is a saturated market. When you're streaming, it's free. You know what I mean? So you're not paying for commercials. You are literally putting your content out there for people to watch for free, and you don't necessarily have to pay anything. There are some platforms that you would pay for to be on, but I chose the free route. Well, that also means the challenge of viewership. You know what I mean? What's going to make somebody watch my video instead of the next one? I paid so much attention to thumbnails. Like if you go onto YouTube and you're looking at the thumbnails of the videos, the loud, kind of obnoxious ones where they cut the image of the deer out and then they take another shot of a guy drawing his bow back and they kind of piece it together so it paints the story of like somebody's shooting a deer with their bow, and then they highlight it with colors that aren't like
Not
Not aesthetic.
like yellows, right?
Yeah.
Or blues. Those are not YouTube colors, so they pop and people click on that. I am such that I've always tried to use the most captivating image that I think is artistic and beautiful, and those probably don't get as many clicks, because it's just what's subjectively beautiful to me doesn't necessarily mean that it's entertaining or interesting to the large majority of our audience. So it's also kind of like getting out of my, I guess, out of my comfort zone and adjusting to what people want versus what I want.
Yeah.
I know that once they click on it and they see it, they'll be consumed by it, but it's getting them to watch it. That's always been the struggle. It's gotten easier over the years, obviously, but especially in the beginning, man, that was really hard.
Yeah, and that's where it's nice to have a team and get a different set of eyeballs and a different perspective on things.
Oh, dude, and especially when you're up late, I'm up late editing. And if I overlay some text, whether it's somebody's name or, maybe we just didn't have a seamless transition from one time period to the next because somebody just didn't have the camera rolling. Well, what am I to do? Should I junk it or should I just build in like an overlay of text that says, the following week or something like that? But maybe because I was so tired and it was like 1 a.m, I've been going, maybe I spelled something wrong. Having an extra set of eyes before I publish it's always been helpful too, just to say, hey man, you got like an audio blip here or you got a typo there. So yeah, having a team around me has been super productive. Absolutely. Yeah, this is definitely not a one-man operation. This is when I started Chase Nation, I had 15 guys filming for me. I think we're down to 11 now, and 2 husband and wife teams. And everybody is extremely helpful. I've got a core team of 5 guys that, if we get booked for a job, I can send them out. I know, I can trust that they're going to go out there and get the job done. They'll show up and be professional, work with our clients, and do it right, and get me the footage back to produce. I could not do what I'm doing without a lot of those guys. Absolutely.
Are you producing then everything?
100% of it.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. In the very beginning, the guy that Brad Rowinski and I, when we started the company, it was not for profit. We didn't try to earn revenue. It was not about making money on YouTube. It wasn't about getting sponsorships. It was nothing about that. It was purely a passion project, and I mean that in every sense of the word. And you've heard the term moonlighting. Like, I don't think I can put it into any better perspective when I explain that this has been a moonlighting profession, because I literally worked under moonlight for 4 or 5 years before I finally started to get a nice big following, and I could kind of slow my pace, kind of break free of the semi-live content that I thought I had to do to keep the content rolling, to generate more views. As more viewership started to come, I was able to then take my time, let's film for the season, and then in the off season I'll start to edit, and then we'll roll it out more consistently in a pattern, as a actual season, the following fall, especially hitting those peak periods. Because I was always trying to edit semi-live, and I'll tell you what, that'll burn you out so fast.
And then you
know,
miss out on
guy-
stuff too.
The guy harvests the deer and he sends me his footage. I get it a week later. I'm like, okay, well, season's changing. If we want to get views, we're going to need to put this thing out there like tomorrow. So I would start editing right away. I mean, I'd burn myself out pretty bad. That was a challenge, but I'm glad I did it. You know, I mean, I'm proud of doing it. It's just, it was a hard first few years. Absolutely. Yeah. And now, you know, now we do draw a profit. We book clients, we work with partners in the industry, and it's really become not only lucrative, but it's become just so much more like clockwork and less like a grind, if that makes sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We kind of know what we're doing now. We kind of have a rhythm and flow, and there's like a really good vibe in the air with the team. Everybody works together, everybody gets along, and we have the same vision, I think. So things have
Nice.
been going pretty good.
Just had to figure out that path.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like anything. It's funny, you know, nowadays it's like, okay, so what's going to draw an audience today? Well, you know, if you watch that episode where I was in Minnesota and I had the severe vertigo, that knocked me out. I mean, that almost killed me. Did you guys watch that film at all?
I haven't seen that one.
I
No.
haven't yet.
I mean, it's funny, like, you know, the things that I would think would draw a crowd, you know, or like a lot of views would be like beautiful cinematography, premium audio, crispy shots, just everything on point, you know, produced magically. What really seems to draw a lot of attention is when incidents happen. I think that's clickbaity. You know what I mean?
I think it's raw and
2 years
real.
ago-
You know, it's
Yeah,
relatable.
yeah.
So, yeah.
2 years ago, and I've never hunted with an outfitter before, but we started working with Vail, and as a introduction to Vail, they took us, myself and one of my other videographers, Chase Nation, on a deer hunt with an outfitter in Minnesota. My biggest mistake was not sharing my location with anybody. So they put a pin on a waypoint pin on a map, right? And it was about a 2.5 mile trek on this huge farm, like 4,000 acres. I had to cross 2 rivers, and I get back to this blind that had been set up. I never hunted here. I walked in the dark right around 4 o'clock. I hunted all day. I didn't bring enough water, so I was dehydrated. It was 6 degrees standing temp. With 12 minutes left, a nice buck came out. I was with my muzzle loader. I was positioned between 2 very high cliff faces, so there was extreme reverb, so the echo was intense. And although I was in a blind, I had the muzzle out of the window, but when I pulled the trigger, I'm not sure if it was the percussion blast reverbing off of the cliffs or the cap, you know, going off and burning the gunpowder. Whatever happened, I just know that deer crashed. I turned the camera around, started doing like my closing interview, and then my world flipped upside down and I fainted. I came to, and it was like shades of blue, you know, like almost dark. And I had a rendezvous point I needed to get back to, and I thought, man, I'm so dizzy. I can't believe how dizzy I am. But I got to get there because I know somebody heard the shot, and they're going to be sitting there drinking a beer, expecting, you know, Sam's going to show up any minute, and they're just going to be lost in conversation, and I'm going to be sitting here suffering. So I got out of the blind and tried walking, and I ended up crashing into a tree and then landing in a creek. There's a creek about 12 yards from the blind. And at 6 degrees, I had fingerless gloves and all that, I was freezing and I couldn't find my way back to the blind. So I sat up against a tree, just trying to figure out where everything was. And then I eventually saw the lats of the ladder, and I got over there and climbed back in. I was soaking wet. I had 2nd degree hypothermia. Body temp was down to 93 degrees. And the vertigo knocked me out. I think four times I fainted on the 911 call. No reception back there. So the only thing that works on your cell phone is that SOS call to 911. And luckily their GPS was able to pick me up, and they had 30 search and rescue people come out, get me out of there and evacuate me. But, we managed to capture the majority of that on film.
Jeez.
And for what people just love watching that kind of
Gosh.
thing, Like, it's
Yeah,
probably
me
not the best.
captivated. Holy cow.
Yeah.
Yeah, you had me at the edge of my
Jeez.
seat.
That's crazy.
I'm glad you're okay through all that. Wow. That's,
And that was last season?
That was 2 seasons ago.
2 seasons ago.
They
Oh,
told
but
me,
came out last season. Yeah.
Yeah, they told me not to spend time in tree stands anymore, and to make sure I'm always wearing hearing protection when I'm around gunfire. And it would take an army to keep me out of a tree. That's what I do. But I'm very safe when I'm in a tree. I always am wearing my safety harness. And then the ear protection, I paid a lot of money for my hearing protection. It intensifies the hearing, so you can hear a twig snap, but the loud sound of a gun going off would be completely muffled. This last season, during the firearm season, I had them at my feet, but you'll see when this film rolls out this fall, when the deer comes out, I stand up, I turn a GoPro on, then I got to turn my main camera on, and then the guy in the camera with me starts operating the camera, and then I'm so quick on the gun because of the deer moving through the area so fast that I shot without putting my hearing protection on. And it rocked me. I was in bad shape there for a minute, but I was able to collect myself, and everything was fine. But it was pretty scary.
wow. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to ask
There's
if you've
something-
experienced any adverse effects from that incident, but that answers
Yeah.
my question.
Yeah, so the Vertigo lasted about a month and a half, where it was every day, every other day, shorter bouts of it. I was on some medicine that was supposed to, anti-nausea medicine that was prescribed to kind of alleviate it. But I would say that nowadays, if I'm dehydrated or something and I just get 1 minute of nausea, I do have anxiety that spurs out of my whole body gets hot because I get nervous because I don't know if that's going to happen to me again.
Right.
So that's pretty scary. Yeah.
That's crazy.
But I mean, that's just it's the way the cookie crumbles, I guess.
Yeah.
I can't do anything about it, but I can't
just-
stop doing what I do either.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's your
just
passion.
gotta play the hand that you're dealt.
Yeah, yeah. So that, I mean, but on the side of filming, like we still captured most of that.
Yeah, how did you do that? Yeah.
Well, the camera was rolling when I fainted, so you kind of caught me falling, and then there was like a moment where it was just black forever, and then you can hear me making these disgusting sounds, or I'm like these breathing sounds, agonal breaths, like the it's
Oh,
kind of
yeah.
gross. I called 911. I talked to them for 45 minutes. I was in and out of consciousness, and then when I recovered, I called the Winona police department, and I actually got a copy of that 911 call. So I was able to marry that into the film. Obviously, it's 45 minutes, so I just took little pieces of it, and so somebody could get the gist of what's going on and share that in the film. It's pretty gnarly.
That's crazy.
Gosh.
Dang. Yeah, we'll definitely link that in the description of this podcast
Yeah,
so
that'll
people
be
can
on
people
TV.
can watch it.
Not that we want you to create more of those types of films.
Well, you know what?
Gosh.
It's so important to showcase that because unscripted adventures, when I told you the name of our flagship show title, Unscripted Adventures, it really it represents telling the truth. I mean, this is what happens out there. It's not always perfect, you know what I mean? Bad shots happen, misses happen, bad weather happens, you get stuck, cars break down, all that kind of thing. That's what's relatable. And I always thought if we can relate to an audience in some way that, they can say, well, okay, I don't know this guy from Adam. I don't even know if I like his personality, but I can definitely relate. I've been in a situation like that. Like I've gone down a river before, a couple miles, and it's rained and current picked up and I couldn't paddle back against that current to get back to the car. So, what do we do? Do we hike out? Do we tip the boat and camp under? I mean, these are real stories that have happened, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
And we filmed them. And doing that has drawn a lot of respect, I think, from a lot of our fans. Showcasing what happened to me, the medical emergency. Yeah, I mean, these are relatable things, and it's pure honesty. as opposed to modifying what you're seeing with some false pretense. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So,
you can't really script something like that.
No, no.
So you mentioned a little bit like that guided hunt was with Vail. So that's kind of how
Yep.
we got how we got connected, like SCHEELS and you guys. We came up with a new camouflage pattern, V2, our second rendition of Verdon camouflage from SCHEELS Outfitters. So that's how I first saw like Chase Nation. I was like, I guess I'm not super familiar, and like kind of started watching a little bit of your stuff and was like, okay, cool. So can you just talk to us a little bit about how that sort of relationship started and thoughts on the camouflage?
Yeah, so Hunter was the rep, the marketing guy, I guess you'd call him, or relations manager at Vail. And he had a mutual friend who films with me with Chase Nation. And so he had heard of us and knew what we did. And he understood the backstory, like I've been telling you guys. And he held a lot of respect for us and what we do. And I was so pleased when he called. You know, I had not thought about ever reaching out to a camouflage company to get any kind of endorsement. So when he made that call, I was a little bit surprised, but I was honored. We started working with Vail in, I want to say 2019, and since then, my whole team has been strictly wearing the SCHEELS Outfitters pattern, the V2 camo, and then what you see in the background here, I don't know if you can see it, but the West River. West River is my money pattern. Like, I'm obsessed. Mostly, you know, it's funny. This West River pattern, a lot of guys will say, is that like a snow camo, or like what region does that make sense to wear? Or do you only wear that like in the late fall? I wear this pattern, this West River pattern, all season long, because I've never looked up at the sky when I'm hunting tree stands. I think about the, you know, with a deer's view, right? When they look up at the sky and seeing like, you know, anything other than like clouds and maybe tree branches. So if I want to disappear into the sky, I'm pretty sure West River, if you squint your eyes at a camo pattern, you can if it disappears, or if it like blends in like West River would do looking up at the sky, you got a winner. V2, when you squint your eyes, it is spaced out so perfectly that it's not like a big like silhouette. There are some patterns, without naming any different brands, that if you squint your eyes at it, it'll literally just look like one solid color rather than a couple. I think when you squint your eyes at a camo pattern, if it doesn't disappear like West River does in the sky, it should probably be broken up into like 2 or 3 blocks of color, something that gives it some 3D dimension. And that's kind of why I'm so obsessed with V2. And it wasn't because we were told to wear it. That was the one that I chose with a few offers that they gave me. I'm just, I've been sold on V2 and West River from the beginning of working with Vail. It's just my thing.
Yeah.
I'm probably the loudest spokesperson for West River camo, I should say.
I would say so.
Anybody I've ever heard, because I literally preach this stuff to people. So
I think he sold it to me
I
just
agree
now.
with you
So
100%.
I was
love
like,
that.
that's a really good point.
here's another way to
Wow.
look at it. You guys into fishing at all?
Oh, boy.
I was thinking about about like what fish see when they look up in the fishing line.
So yeah, it's 2 ways. I mean, there's a lot of different things. When you think about color and you think about patterns and disappearing, you think about Thayer's law of counter shading. Like, think about a sandpiper on a beach has a white belly and a dark back, right? So when it flies, it disappears in the sky, but when it's on the sand, it disappears from anything looking down, right? So like predatory birds looking down aren't going to see it, and you know, predatory birds looking up shouldn't see it. So therein lies the idea. You think about fish, white bellies. Most fish have a white belly and a dark back, and it's the same concept at play. When I think about the way lures are painted, I think about how they are painted such that they're made to sell to the consumer. If you squint your eyes at a beautiful detailed paint job on a musky lure, right? Or like a crankbait for bass, you're going to see one solid color or maybe two. And all I can think about is that. So when I'm buying any, like I'm a big musky fisherman. So when I'm looking at these intricate paint jobs, I think, yeah, that's beautiful. It's going to look beautiful hanging, when I'm storing it, but it's going to get hook rash real fast when I start to use it. And when I think about a fish seeing it, I'm going to squint my eyes. Now I see like one or two colors. And then I got to remember that it's moving underwater and it's underwater. So you got all these things going against you. And who knows about the color of the sky or how bright it is outside. So it might just be feeling that they're going off of. Before I get too deep in the weeds on fish and stuff, I look at that the same way as I look at camouflage. You know what I mean? Like these intricate details of tree bark and stuff that you see on some camouflage patterns. Do they always make sense? I don't know. I mean, if a deer is 5 feet away from you, maybe it'll see these really, really thin tree bark lines, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But if a deer is 20 or 30 yards away and trying to look around, is it going to see those lines, or is it going to see more of like a solid color? So that's why I like V2. That bright green is very light. And, deer don't see color except for shades of blue, right? But otherwise they see shades of gray. So picture the different shading compound of that V2 camo. You have a bright green, and then you have like a little bit lighter but still darker shade of brown. And those are the two colors that pop when I squint my eyes. So that gives it that 3D effect. The same thing goes, hand in hand when you're looking at fishing baits. I always probably get too deep in the weeds when I talk on details like this, but I'm really, really passionate about these topics.
Well, that's good. I think, it's not all camels created equal. So.
Oh, yeah. I've got a question, too.
Yeah.
You got something?
I mean, now I finally get to talk about fashion.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. Go
It's
ahead.
your opportunity.
Yeah. My question was, so obviously you were talking about using West River in a tree stand, too. Did you ever find success or any differences using it in the ground or on the ground or anything like that? Or if you do any spot and stock with it at all, or are you still sticking with V2 on that?
So I wore West River a lot in Nebraska, and that was all spot and stalk hunting. That was more expansive, open terrain. Mm-hmm. I wore West River in North Dakota, wide open terrain. If you watch Whitetail Adrenaline, those boys go to Walmart and they pick up, a cheap Champs or whatever brand hooded sweatshirt and a can of spray paint, much like the kind of khaki or that creamy color that's in the West River pattern, and they draw just lines on it, and they get right up on top of deer. Well, the only thing that's different between those clothes and West River is the comfortability and literally let's be honest, quality, right? So when I'm wearing West River, I'm wearing it for a reason. It stands up. I've had the same, other than 2 years ago when they cut every piece of West River I had off my body in that hospital. All the West River I have now, I use and abuse it, and it's still strong. I don't have to worry about my pant legs getting stretched out and, bunched up in my knee pits. The armpits are gusseted. There's so many little details that make me more comfortable in the woods for a longer period of time wearing this stuff than if I was to just go to like a Walmart, pick something out that's cheap, spray paint it, and get up on top of animals. Now for those boys, it makes sense, and I know them well, and real friendly with them. So it's okay for me to talk about what they wear. You know what I mean? They're not gonna be offended, but they're not gonna wear it very many times. I mean, that stuff ends up with holes in the elbows and ripped armpits and all kinds of things by the end of a week or two, crawling and brawling with big deer on, sharp blades of grass and stone. So, I've used West River a lot on the ground in expansive terrain. I've also used it, in snowy conditions. You guys are going to see a film called The Mentor that's going to be releasing this fall. It's probably some of my best work. I filmed Steve Jeffrey. If you can see that screen in the background here, he's one of my guys on Chase Nation, and he arrowed this split G3 buck at about 12 yards in the most beautiful 4K footage I think I've ever laid down of a shot on a buck. He made a perfect shot, and he's totally dressed to the nines in his West River. This is filmed on Halloween. It snowed, before it got light out into about 8:30. At 8:45, the snow had all but stopped, and this deer stood up from his bed, maybe 120 yards away, shook all the snow off, and he came in. He still had about an inch of snow on his forehead. I can't even explain how beautiful this footage is, but there again, you see how West River really shines. I mean, some of the photography just from, recovering this deer and getting him out of the woods will really show off how you virtually disappear in the kind of terrain that we were in with the snow on the ground. So yeah, I mean, when people say, is that just a snow camo? I say, yes, it is. It is perfect in snow and in grassy and any kind of really conditions outside when there's snow on the ground. But you really do disappear in the sky with it too. So like I said, I'll wear this in the early season also.
Mm-hmm. I know exactly what you're talking about too, because if you go into the archives of the SCHEELS Outdoors Facebook and Instagram pages, you'll see one of those photos that was used.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, I didn't know that, but that's good to know. I'm glad.
Yep. Yeah, it'll probably be used again here this year.
There's a photo of Steve here on that same hunt. I don't know if this is the photo you're talking about, but this one's really special. The reason that I named the film The Mentor is because I wanted some meat behind it. I didn't want to just showcase this one. I mean, it was his first time out bow hunting for the year. He spent all of September and October filming for me and a couple other guys on the team, and it was my turn to repay the favor. So on his first hunt, he harvests this deer. So we didn't have a lot of build-up for him, not a bunch of B-roll and that kind of thing. And I thought, man, this is such beautiful footage. We've got to do something that is film-worthy, something we could submit to the Badlands Film Fest, or something that just needs to get seen. We'll cut it down to like 10 minutes so people will consume all of it. Sometimes people drop off after, 50, 60% of the way through. Every bit about this I wanted to get seen. And so I thought, let's call it The Mentor and talk through how your father got you interested in the outdoors. And so it'll tug at the heartstrings, and there's just so much. Yeah, you guys are gonna love it. But there's this part of the recovery, going back to that photo, where I got the idea. He was on the phone with his father. It's the first person he called, and I got the shot, and you can see the sun is just getting high in the sky, and there's this beautiful ray of light coming off the sun, and it's hitting the snow just perfectly, and it's glistening. And he's on the trail that we mowed by the food plot, and he's standing over the deer, with his phone up to his ear, talking to his dad. And I just thought, oh my gosh, I was sitting there just panting from dragging the deer, but I had my camera in my hand, and it was the most perfect opportunity. And I grabbed that one photo, and that's a photo I hope you've seen. If that's the one you're talking about, I get it. If not, I gotta send it to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you'll have to send it either way, just to confirm that it is or isn't.
Definitely.
Yeah, but that's where the idea of The Mentor came from, because it's like, man, your dad, he is the first person you call. We drove way out of our way so we could drive by his place of employment so he could see your deer. Why not tie that into it? So yeah, it's gonna be a great one.
That's cool.
Very cool. What else do you have coming up besides this Mentor one that you talked about?
Oh, this was absolutely an astonishing season. And I would say our best season as far as harvests on film was first season. I think there was 16 deer. We got a billy goat off the mountains in Alaska. We had an elk, and I don't know, we had so many different big game animals that first season. Now this last season was just astonishing for whitetail. I mean, it was awesome. We got 13 big bucks on film. I've got 11 guys. We have 5, 6, 7 youth mentor hunts that were successful, including a buck. We've got a few of the wives of some of the guys on the team getting out there and getting their first deer. My daughter getting her first deer at 7 years old with a bow. Gosh, there's so much content that's coming down the pipeline. This has been an extremely busy summer editing to get this season all together in time to start showcasing. we're going to launch that season the third Friday of the month of August. That's going to start out with an elk hunt, a do-it-yourself elk hunt, over-the-counter tag in Colorado. And then I think the second episode is me. I'm in my V2, and that was my Wisconsin buck I got with the bow. And then, yeah, man, I don't even know the order. We've got so many. We've got big bucks in Kansas, Illinois, Wisconsin, Nebraska. Man, where else? Oh, there's like 5. Iowa. Did I already say that one? We got deer coming out of our ears this year, so we got a big season.
That's awesome.
Count it, third week of August. It's going to be a busy one.
Wow.
Perfect.
Are they dropping in like sequence, or like certain ones dropping at certain times, or just an every week type of thing?
I'm trying to do it that way. The reason we're launching, I was going to do it the first week of September, but the guys were pushing me. They're like, you really need to drop that elk hunt like the third week of August, because the guys that are going to Colorado to elk hunt in September, they're going to want to see that.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah.
Yeah,
right.
you got to get
The
them
only
all
thing we
primed
didn't
up
have
for
this
their
year was-
hunts.
Oh, exactly. So this is the difference. You know, like when I was talking through the struggles in the beginning, is like trying to keep up semi-live, and you know, it wasn't always possible to get the episodes spit out like a couple days later. I mean, sometimes it would be a week or two, and then sometimes 2 or 3 guys would harvest in the same week, and then that would really spread out the distance between releasing some of these films. By the time we get through the whole season, it would be, you know, into February, and nobody's really thinking about deer hunting anymore. You know, the outdoor community goes quiet and cold on YouTube and some of the other outdoor streaming platforms that they can watch our content. And so here I was like releasing some really awesome stuff, knowing full well I'm not going in at like a peak time. I also wasn't paying attention to like the highlights that YouTube, or like the stats that YouTube and Instagram and, you know, other streaming platforms and social media platforms tell you, you know, where the majority of your followers are online at this time. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
CTR rates are the highest on Fridays, between 5 and 6 on YouTube for our channel. So why am I not just always launching videos on Fridays right at dinner time? You know what I mean? Like, these are the things I wasn't thinking back then.
Mhm.
You know, now I'm thinking about it, and I have the time to edit and not like be under pressure all the time. Yeah.
I've got a question about.
That, and we're going to Deer Fest this year in Wisconsin, which is like our home show. You know, the expo shows. We go to several shows a year, but Deer Fest is our like favorite show, because a lot of the demographic of our followers, not all of them, we have them all over the country, but we have a huge following in Wisconsin, probably because we're a bunch of Wisconsin boys. You know what I mean? And they come and visit us, and we get a big group around our 10 by 20 space where our booth is set up, and we have our show streaming, and we have a few of the deer that we got mounted from the season before on display, and selling apparel and talking to everybody. And I have no voice left at the end of the weekend.
I believe that.
Yeah, I had a question about, when in the beginning, like you said, because you'd filmed for a couple different people before you started Chase Nation. So
Yeah.
when you started it, were you wanting to just take the creativity your own way and film things, or did you ever want to have the chance to be the one in front of the camera, or was it a mixture of both?
That's a good question. I like being in front of the camera. It's just that I'm so addicted to the camera, being behind it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
As an editor, I'll tell you what, you become way better at filming when you've edited, because you're becoming more hyper aware of what scenes make sense to piece together. It could be something like filming in a hallway, and it's, you know, shadowy, it's relatively dark. The subject is walking towards you down the hallway, and maybe he's got like a deep maroon burgundy or whatever plaid flannel shirt on. And as he gets close, that shot that was like perfectly focused on him coming down, I would leave my focus out and let him kind of get a creamy bokeh, so he gets blurry, in other words, as he gets closer. And then the whole screen goes black as he gets this close to my lens. And then I'll use that as a natural transition into the next scene, which might be like the camera, I maybe started filming from down below and then moved up into the light or something. So I'm not doing a bunch of generic transitions that are, out of the box or whatever with my editing program. I'm creating them. Something like filming in a car, taking the keys and actually like turning the car off, getting that macro shot, then getting set up and getting the handle at the door, the hand on the door handle, then getting on the other side of the car, getting underneath to get the feet dropping onto the ground, then coming around, having him close the door again to get the door closing. These are the kind of scenes that I see in my head as an editor, and so I know to go film those. When you got guys that aren't used to editing, I just tell them, just hit record, because we can't get back what you don't capture. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's kind of
Well, that's good. That's part of my role here at SCHEELS is doing some filming. I don't do a ton of editing, but I have tinkered around with it. There's people that are much better at that than I am. But it's cool to see just like the thought process of different people that just kind of have different versions of doing stuff like that in filming.
But I mean, I do like to be in front of the camera. You just, as a cameraman yourself, like as a cameraman, you're the last one to be in pictures.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was talking about with that shot that you were talking about with the sun ray going down and things like that.
Yeah.
Like, you have to sometimes think like, man, that'd be a cool shot to like be in, like as something to put, on the wall or on whatever social or something like that. But like, you just have to have the pride of knowing that you're the one that took the photo.
I will say that I am very fortunate that some of my closest friends are part of my team, and they are so good with the camera. Some are better at photography than they are videography, and some vice versa. One guy might be incredible at taking photos, but he's like a berserk mosquito trying to hold a camera steady. Filming. But having those guys around, they do have that creative eye for photography, and I do have some really great shots that they've managed to get of me where, I had no idea they were shooting anything. But yeah, I do suffer from, being a cameraman a lot more than I'm in front of one. Yeah, behind the lens a lot.
Yeah, that's why I was just curious if that's where the start came from or not. So,
dude, I'll tell you what, it came from stirring. I told you I'm a musky fisherman. I remember my dad taking me out ice fishing when I was a kid, and he would tell me, he's like, one day you talk about musky fishing someday. Well, one day you're going to be drawing figure eights. And I'm like, what is that? What's a figure eight? So he took his ice fishing jig and rod, and he started drawing these little figure eights in the ice hole. I remember this. I was like 6. And so when I was about 8 years old, I started musky fishing and started just like pointing the rod down and like making these tiny little figure eights. And I remember him telling me, you got to space them out. Imagine a big long fish trying to chase your bait, turning his body. It's not going to be able to do it. You got to make them bigger. And so I thought about that a lot, and I started practicing, got really good at it. By about 10 years old, all I thought about was musky fishing. And I was sitting there in my kitchen, was living with my mom, they were divorced, and I had oatmeal. I was drawing figure eights in my oatmeal with my spoon. And I looked out of the window, and it was wintertime, and there was this icicle, and there was drips of water coming off of it. My mom had just bought this big this big camcorder, right? And I went and grabbed that camcorder, and I went outside trying to be like a National, Geographic photographer. I sat there just trying to get these like macro shots of the beads of water coming off. And I guess that's probably where it started. I became real passionate with capturing certain scenes on film. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So as long as I've been an outdoorsman, I've been just captivated by photography and imagery, whether it's moving or static, and gosh, I get lost in the weeds on these conversations so easily.
Yeah, I've got the same mindset. I love it.
Yeah, I was about to take you guys down a rabbit hole talking about different types of lights and shading. I was talking about musky fish, and I got to remember I was in like a musky fish podcast or something.
Oh yeah,
yeah. We took a sharp detour off the hunting there.
Yeah.
No, it was great though. It's good to just kind of get into your brain and see how that artistic capabilities
that's what
came to be.
consumers see.
Yeah. And you see it like with your cooking videos too. I was watching those. So I was like,
Thank you. For me with the cooking, I don't like to listen. I like to just watch. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like I
And
saw like
most
the
of the time-
ingredients.
Yes, and you're in your kitchen and you're trying to follow somebody's ingredients, right? So I thought, let's make it a 3-minute format, something quick. And it's just music. You can mute it if you want, but all you really care about is what we're putting in front of you and putting, or how we're doing what we're doing. And it seems to, some of them work better than others. I'm a little bit obsessed with cooking too.
Well,
Like
then I
about
can
as
see your
detailed as I get.
your
Yeah.
artistic eye. I even like the presentation too. I was like, that's like a Michelin chef there. That's a nice presentation.
Man, if you want more views on your cooking show, you really got to do something like, I don't know, cornflake breaded crappie or something. And I'm like, oh man, it'd probably be good. But that's not like, the way I like to cook is very like fine dining. It's like a culinary experience, and I'm obsessed with creating a dish that is like sexy. And I don't know if I could do that, but that's again that mentality I've got to get away from, and just like the thumbnails for YouTube, you know what I mean, where I've got to remind myself that it's not just what I like. It's if you want to get a reach and you want to like extend your audience to a greater audience, you kind of got to bend your ways a little bit. So I don't know, we'll probably start doing a little bit less intensive ingredient like dishes, I guess, like campfire style cooking.
Musky
Or,
4 ways.
Or cabin style, like what, hey, this is something you can make in your cabin. You probably have salt, pepper, and maybe some, I don't know, seasoned salt or something. What do people have in their cabin? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And maybe some cooking oil or some lard or butter. What can you do with just those few ingredients? Maybe I need to do something like that.
Chopped on Chase Nation.
Yeah.
Or whatever it is. When they have the basket.
Yeah.
Random ingredients.
Yeah, that'd be good. I gotta try the Swedish meatballs.
I've
Those
always
jumped out at
been
me.
very, I guess, somewhat obsessive about little details, and maybe that's why I choose to express myself through images. Like artistically, my way of showcasing my interest is through photography and videography and my editing style and that kind of thing. It even transfers into the way I look at, like I was explaining how I kind of look at musky lures or any lure or camouflage, right? I mean, this goes so deep, you guys. When I was in my teenage years, I learned about the Perkinji shift. You know what that is?
No.
Perkinji shift is if you picture yourself out in a lake and it's bright and sunny out, you see, obviously, in the summertime, there's green leaves all around the lake, right? But they might not show as bright as they do when it gets overcast. If you ever notice lower light or when clouds come in, the greens, they get really, really bright, okay? You go up to a rose bed and you're looking at red roses. What shows up on a bright sunny day? The red or the green? I can tell you it's the red. The green will be darker. But when the storm comes in or lower light, that red kind of gets more like almost like a shade of purple or like velvety, I don't know what the color is, just a darker shade of red, right? It's not
Burgundy.
so bursting with light, but the green pops. That's the Perkinji shift. So when I'd be musky fishing, I would go to colors like greens and yellow in low light, right? And then I would put bright oranges and bright reds and things like that and bright pink on it when it's sunny out, because I wanted to maximize the visibility of my lures. Shoot,
That's crazy. That's awesome.
I even thought about how like airplanes make a wake. You've been in an airplane and hit a big bump, and the pilot's like, "Everybody, it's okay. We just hit a wake of another airplane. That little bit of turbulence, you won't feel that again." I don't know if you ever felt that, but I've a couple times. And I thought about it, like, what in the hell is a wake of an airplane? What's displacement of air? So water. And I've caught blind muskies before and thought, how in the world? So you start thinking about the fact that a muskie or any fish really feeds off of feeling, right? And vision is really not like the key, right? It's a lure that makes a fish feel, makes them seek it out. I don't know how much you guys know about like muskies, but they follow baits a lot. Most of the fish we catch as a muskie fisherman, they eat at your feet. I mean, I'd say 70 to 80% of my fish are caught right at the boat. And I don't believe that it's necessarily the fish following the color or the sight of my bait so much as it is the feeling of it. Because sometimes when they get up close, you would think you have to be crazy to put your mouth around that. So I think really it's just a vibration, it's a feeling. And so I'm very intense with the little details, and I think I transfer some of that into my work with photography and all, basically everything I do.
Yeah.
Shoot, you probably wouldn't like reading stuff that I write, because I'm such a visionary. I try to like put you in the place, and I maybe use too many words, to put somebody into a state of mind, or like, if I'm writing a how-to article, I tend to spend a lot of time on it because I have to delete so much. I get lost telling people the little details to make you feel the chill on your cheeks, that kind of stuff that doesn't matter. I'm trying to tell somebody, hey, use the wind to your advantage. You want the best scent-free regime. Be downwind of the deer, that kind of thing. And it's a simple concept, but I'll be like storytelling mode, and I've always dealt with that. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing.
I think it's definitely a good thing for a videographer, a photographer. Absolutely, that's probably where it all stems.
Yeah, it definitely shows your
passion.
passion. So, and that's always appreciated.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you got to stay authentic to you too. So I think you got to do that, and maybe you do a whole series of teaching people color and the importance of color, because I think you're onto something. It seems like you're passionate about it and you want to teach people. And hey, why not do a little Chase Nation series on the importance of camo, fishing lures, different things like that. Educate people.
I'm telling you, product reviews on camouflage would be, I should be doing those a long time ago.
You still can.
And I talk about it, but yeah, I'll be happy to, honestly. It's just, it's really vital. I've killed deer and other big game wearing flannel and stuff like that. And the thing of it is there's only so many times of the year that you can get away with dressing like that. Let's be honest. I'm not a hobby hunter. This is not casual for me at all. It's all season long. It's even in the off season, even when it's the worst of weather. I somehow managed to find my way outside and be uncomfortable, but I'd like to be a little bit more comfortable than not. So you can't get away with wearing flannels all the time, and solids all the time. I love solids, have a time and place too, right? But I don't know. I'm a camo guy. I'm a West
He's a
River.
V2 guy. Yeah, V2 West River.
But you see
SCHEELS
our
Outfitters.
turkey content, we are all decked out in V2, like to the nines in V2. Although my gloves are rough. I need new gloves. My gloves are worn out.
Used. Yeah, we should be able to help with that. So
that's about the only thing, turkey hunting, what ends up happening is, if you loading a shotgun cartridge or something, your glove, the thin glove that gets stuck in the chamber or, in the magazine, and eventually it starts to wear. And,
we got to get Ben on that.
Oh, yeah.
Fix that up.
I don't know if there is any.
I don't think there
fixing
is,
that.
yeah.
I bet I have like 20 different pairs of gloves at home, and I don't think
All
any of
thumb,
them
yeah.
don't have at least like one.
Oh, got a little
hole in
nip
one
on
of
the
it.
right
Yeah.
thumb.
Yeah, it's gonna happen.
It's not like they're something to throw away. You just cut the fingers off, and then you can use them, trigger finger, or you can use them for filming still, and that kind of thing. So they still serve a purpose. They just don't cover the whole hand anymore.
My favorite pair of gloves, it has the index finger. It's pretty much all the way off now, but then I can still manipulate my phone with it. So it's actually serves a better purpose now than
You like it better now.
this brand.
Yeah.
That's the DIY glove.
There you go. All right. Well, Sam, thank you so much for your time. I'd initially expected to talk about some hunt and show stuff and a little bit of V2 camo, and I got like a master course in colors. So that was super cool. Just greatly appreciate your time, and looking forward to all that awesome content you have coming up. Late this summer, early fall.
I really appreciate you guys bending an ear for me and giving me a chance and a platform to share some of my stories and a little bit more about me and Chase Nation and what we do. I really, really am grateful. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, thanks again, and best of luck this upcoming hunting season.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to the SCHEELS Outdoors podcast. Stay tuned for future segments and visit our social media pages, SCHEELS Outdoors on Facebook and Instagram for daily updates.